What is up, 7.3 fans? Brandon here with the 7.3 Garage. Today is the day the motor is coming out. I got Frankie here with his beautiful 99 or 2000, I always forget, 7.3 Powerstroke, 4-wheel drive, crew cab long bed, beautiful truck. And Tucker's here with the F-150 here to help us out. So we basically have everything stripped off, starters off. We got all the other odds and ends kind of undone here. The oil is out of the truck. I talked about that in the last video, but the oil is out. Basically got some electrical components off here. We have the engine hoist and our floor jack. We're ready to go. There's Tucker and Frankie coming over to help us, so should make this a little bit easier with a few more people here. But let me show you what we got going on here before we get going on the pull here. All right, so quick change of plans. The rain got to us. What are we looking like here?
Just a little storm.
So this is us with a nice little blue dot here. So typical South Florida, but we're basically ready to go. We got one more trans bolt to get off. And so let me get you a little more focused here. We have the engine hoist courtesy of Frank, and the jack is courtesy of my neighbor. But looks basically like it did in the last video. I'm hoping to get that downpipe out of here. All this stuff, all this old heat shield, if you will, I'm going to try and pull all that out of there to make a nice stick-on one that I want to get on there, because this is kind of in the way. It hangs, and it'll hang up on, it actually rubs on the oil feed line for the turbocharger, so that'll be nice to get out of there. I'm going to try and clean some of this stuff up. I'm going to wire wheel and probably just paint some of this stuff up here with just some black Rust-Oleum to kind of clean it up. But the later part of the video, we are going to be pulling the heads off. I'm going to be pulling the oil pan off as well, so we can take a look and see what broke. But I will set the camera up on a bucket, or I already have it on my bipod right now, so we will be doing that. But just you can see a nice collection of parts under here. Trying to keep everything as organized as possible. It's a big deal when it comes to keeping track of things and making sure everything's in the right spot. But I got the turbo part, was kind of fiddling with that and cleaning it up the other day. Had a bunch of oil in the compressor housing and along the back plate there where the compressor wheel is. But I know we saw this in the last video, but again, organization is crucial when doing something like this. You don't want to lose anything, and you don't want to be trying to hunt stuff down. But we will get going here as soon as the rain stopped, and we will also have a time lapse to show you the actual engine pull, so that'll be coming up right now. All right, so we're back. We had to take a quick bathroom break and have some dinner. There's the man himself, but we were able to get the motor out pretty quickly, as you saw from the video. So I will walk over here in just a second and show you what we got here. But as you can see, the motor's out. We used a 2x4 here to support the transmission right up against the front of the bell housing. We used just a regular floor jack with another 2x4 to lift it up and got it up high. And we ended up using just a hammer and the 2x4 on the frame and kind of tapped it in there nice and easy, just to be careful with the with the actual transmission housing. But we're going to get this motor torn down here. I'll set the camera up for that as well. Get the heads off, get the exhaust manifolds off, all that stuff, pull the pan off, and I want to roll the motor over. But before I do spin the motor on the stand, I want to get some weight off with the heads, because the heads are pretty heavy. So we're going to go ahead and take care of that. And before we do that, let's show you what the motor looks like out of the truck. All right, so here she is. These motors, if I'm not mistaken, I believe with no oil in them or coolant, they weigh right around 920 pounds. With the heads, the exhaust manifolds, the turbocharger, the injectors, everything. So it's not a light engine. I believe a regular Cummins, either a 12 or 24 valve, is right around the same weight, maybe a little bit more. But it's a large motor. It's 444 cubic inches. But there she is. This engine stand here is a 1-ton Harbor Freight engine stand. We tried last time to use a big block stand with the heads off, and it didn't work. It was too heavy. We thought it was going to work, and it ended up starting to creak when we started to take pressure off the back, off the engine hoist onto the stand. So it was actually ended up being too heavy. The bolts here are out of the transmission. These are just like unistrut. I think these are 1/2 inch washers, something like that, just to kind of give you a little bit of gap here. But we basically pulled this off of the engine stand, bolted up, used the impact gun to get on the back of the motor, and then we had to pick up the stand and slide it back in here so we were able to get it up. But this is basically what everything looks like. The valves and everything, from what I can see, looks pretty good for right now, but like I said, we're gonna get off the exhaust manifolds, the up pipes, and we're gonna get off the intake manifolds and pull the heads off, take a look at all that stuff, make sure the head gaskets weren't dislodged, which I don't believe that they were or think they had any reason to be moved. And then we'll roll the motor over and we'll get that pan off and see what kind of damage we got in there. All right, so we made some progress here. As you can see, we have the T4 mount for my rate. The exhaust up pipes are off. We have our plenums off as well, so that's gotta come off. It just makes it easier so they don't get all beat up, especially the ones that I bought. I really want them to get banged up. So this is just a pet peeve of mine, what I like to do. You don't have to do this, number the cylinders unless someone else says otherwise, but I believe it doesn't really matter where they go in the motor. But I just like to know what injector came from what cylinder, so I like to number them, just clean off with some brake cleaner if this is something that you're considering doing, just to make it a little easier. So a quick little injector 101 thing here. For people that may either be pulling fuel injectors, this is not really an injector how-to, but just kind of where I'm at in this process here. So each injector, you can see on this one here, you have your oil deflector, which is up top, which is an Allen key, or an Allen head tool, if you will. I'm not entirely sure on the size. I have to look at it. Let me see. I got it right here on this gun here. What size is this? They're calling it an H5, I guess is the size. That goes right in here. Be careful with these. These are only like a cast aluminum, so they're very brittle. So some people will try and just pull the collar bolts out of the fuel injector and pry with this. You will crack them, I promise you. It's almost like tree bark. It's very, very thin and frail. And underneath here, so here's your injector collar, and underneath here is where your bolt is. This is an 8mm hold down bolt. So once you get this out, you get your oil deflector out, and you get the little 8mm hold down bolt. It should come right out. You basically hold the collar up with your finger. I'm gonna have Frankie show you how it's done, but the collar is loose now. So he'll basically just grab a screwdriver, or if you have a pry bar, you can go ahead and grab it. And you basically apply a little bit of pressure here, and the injector will come out. They do have a lot of oil in there, so I kind of like to let them drain. And I'll show you one quick technique if this is something you're gonna be doing. Let me get you a rag, Frankie.
I got it.
You got it?
Yeah.
If this is something that you're gonna be doing, just changing fuel injectors, the engine's not out of the truck. For us, it doesn't really matter because the heads are coming off anyway, so I really don't care how much oil leaks into the cylinder. If this is something that you're going to be doing on your truck and you're actually servicing or upgrading the fuel injectors, it's a wise decision, and I'll show you this, and this is a pretty well-known thing among 7.3 guys. Let me grab my flashlight here. So on the heads here, I don't know how well I want to blind everybody, but on the heads, I don't know if you guys can see that oil plug there, right above where that A is. Those are Allen, and those will, yeah, there you go, Frank. So Frank's pointing to it right now. If you pop those loose or take them out, they have a little O-ring on them. But if you drain that first and open those up and you get the valve covers off, there's two of them. There's one in the front of the head and one in the back. If you pull those off before, an hour or two before, even the day before, you're gonna pull and service the fuel injectors or upgrade them, it will drain out a large amount of the oil out of the head, so it will reduce a lot of the oil that goes into the cylinder. One more thing before we keep going here, and we'll check back in just a few minutes, is when you pull your fuel injectors out, obviously check and make sure you have no soot on the nozzles here. That will tell you that the fuel injector was fully seated, you didn't have any oil leaking, and the injector was working properly. And you guys can see that copper O-ring is very important to have on there. Some trucks, they will remain inside of the injector cups down here, down in that brass looking area. So you kind of want to make sure that when you pull out those fuel injectors that you have your copper O-rings remaining on your fuel injector. You don't want them to be stuck on there. If they do get stuck on there, it's not a big deal. Just kind of reach in and grab them. If you got like a long pick set or even like a small set of needle nose that you could reach on down in there. But we're going to finish up this head, get that last fuel injector out, work on the passenger side here, and then we'll start working on getting the heads off. We'll be back in just a second here. All right, we're back. Feels like it's been a longer for us, but it's been a couple, or just a transition for you guys. But Frank and I are kind of busting ass on this thing. We got the passenger side head off. So far everything looks pretty good. I'll take you over in just a second. But we're working on the driver's side head, and we're able to rotate the motor over. And I'm gonna go ahead and put the phone down for the removal of that head. I'll try and do a time lapse on that real quick. So that'll be the next thing you'll see. And then we'll get over there for the rotation of the motor to pull the pan off. So before we do that, let's go ahead and walk over and see what we got going on over here. All right, so there is the passenger side cylinder head. Everything looks pretty good. Let me try and knock this light down just a little bit. There we go. All the head gaskets, to me, look pretty good. Push rods look good. All of the valve springs look good. Bunch of oil in there, but that's to be expected. But everything looks pretty good so far. Some of the rocker arms on this side of the motor actually look like they had some sludging going on, and that kind of goes back to my theory of, I believe, some oiling passageways were clogged up by that metal that was in the motor from last year from that dual pump system. So we'll see what the bearings look like when we roll this thing over, but so far so good. Everything looks like it's going pretty well, but we got everything kind of organized over here, which is nice. All the rocker arms, push rods, all the push rods look pretty straight. Nothing looks like they're broken. Those glow plugs are only 2 or 3 years old. They're pretty much brand new. I got another towel down for that head. But I'm gonna go ahead and bounce over to that time lapse so you can watch us pull this head off.
Why can't they see? What's wrong with me? I'll reach to you, but you just lie. What's wrong with me? This is the end of it all.
Okay, so that was the end of the time lapse there. You saw we got that head off. So one quick thing we just noticed after wiping this down here, you guys can see this. Oh, it's a little bright. See that? I don't know if you guys can see that mark there in the bottom of the top of that cylinder. That's from a valve floating. So that's the valve hitting the top of the cylinder. The weird part is I have Comp 910 valve springs in the heads. So those are, I believe they, with shims, it's like 90, it comes out to like 92 pounds of seat pressure. Factory's around 70 or 71, I think. Someone wants to correct me, that's fine, but I believe that's what it is when you have the 910s and the hardened push rods. So what's weird is you can see how that's the valve floated there, and on the opposite cylinder, that's cylinder number 7, this is cylinder number 8, same thing. The rest of the cylinders look like they're pretty clean. There you go, you can really see it there. The rest of them are good. So I'm assuming that this rear bearing is going to be shot, because if that's the case, it floated, if the bearing spun and let loose, the rod bearings, or even the main, well, probably the rod bearings. If these 2 rear rod bearings from oiling or whatever, if it spun, it would float that valve because it would change the tolerance. So we're gonna get this motor rolled over here in a second and take a look. This is auto mechanics, everybody. This is auto mechanics here. This is it. Half the time it's wiping things up. It's not really even doing cool things, but this is, oh yeah, just leak all over. Cardboard isn't really helping us. Moses. At this point, just let it yeah. I'm just going to use all these. It is what it is. So, I'm taking bets that the rear part of the motor, the rear array, the main caps, or the rod bearings, definitely the rod bearings have spun. To me, that's the only thing that would really change the tolerance on the on the motor and cause the thing, because I've been limited doing burnouts at the racetrack and in between shifts trying to figure out tuning and stuff. So it is what it is, but I'm just assuming that that's going to be a culprit. If it's not, I'd be surprised. Usually if you float valves and you're doing a burnout or something, it would be multiple cylinders with the valves floating, but we'll see. So at least we got a little clue there on some of the damage, but let's get another turn. Yeah, let's get one more turn. It's all coming out, all going to the same place anyways. Down. Oh, there we are. Yeah, we're just going to do this. We're just going to load her up with rags. Yeah, I should invest in rag stock, because this is getting insane here.
We gotta, I think that I'm pretty sure they make something that goes.
I think they do, so you can just.
And then it just drain everything.
That's what I need. And this thing, believe it or not, has been sitting, draining for almost 2 weeks like this. The oil pan's been open, but this stuff just sits in the head. It just, some stuff doesn't get out, and water just doesn't get out, and that's the way that it goes.
Let's try that right there one more time.
It's basically almost over. Yeah. 1, 2, 3. That's better. Now it's coming out of the front.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm actually pretty impressed that that valve floated there. Taking bets. I hate using these. That's a clean one. Give the old smell test. I have to degrease all this stuff. Alright, this thing's basically over, so let's get it. The rest of the way folded all the way over. Yeah, we'll go all the way upside down. Ready? It's not sliding out of there, is it? Out of the back where you want some?
Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Okay, I'm gonna go get a towel. This is ridiculous now. Just when you think it's almost all out, it's
Yeah.
not. Here, where's our using this? Stuff I got for free. Holy Moses. Kinda
Perfect.
plug it up there. Alright, we're gonna get the pan off. We'll be back in just a second. Alright, so here it is. And we found a couple weird things and it makes sense now. So we got the oil pan off, which I'll show you what that looks like. That's loaded with bearing material. So all this stuff is, all this copper that you guys are seeing here, that is no good. That is all bearing. Alright? So let's take a look and we'll get my finger cleaned off here. So real quick here, we pulled the pan off. I thought Frankie's a jokester. We joke with each other while we're doing stuff like this. Here's the oil pickup tube. And I came over and there was a nut and it obviously unfortunately fell into the motor, which we'll get out, doesn't really matter because the motor's getting rebuilt. There's a nut sitting here and I was laughing. I said, hey, did you put that there? And he said, no, I'm serious. I really didn't put that there. So we're like, where the hell did that nut come from? Like, I don't, maybe it was from the last time I built it, I forgot. So check this out. That is the nut for the hold down on the pickup tube for the oil pan. And check this out, even crazier we found. You can see right here, the counterbalance is broken off of the crankshaft. Look how much play that has. So that explains that cylinder 7 and 8 both floated valves and caused the valve floating wasn't the cause of this, but look at the rod bearings actually look amazing. The rod bearings look great. The mating surface looks great. This crankshaft is done. I have to get another crankshaft. There's no saving or reusing this crankshaft. It is absolutely done. So I'm kind of impressed. But these are how the rod bearings look. So I'm actually pretty impressed with how well those are still holding up. But those are absolutely, the crankshaft is destroyed. So I'll be getting a new crankshaft for this thing. And these are forged crankshafts. These crankshafts do not fail. And one of the reasons it failed was from heat. So you could even see here on this counterbalance, see all that discoloring, that rainbow looking color, that's all heat. Even down here, again, looks like there's more heat as well. Once the bottom end is thrown out of balance, there's really no going back. It's really just a matter of time before it has a catastrophic failure like this. So we're gonna play around a little bit more here and see what else we got. But we got our answer. So we're gonna need a new crankshaft, which is good because I want to get a new cam bearing and a new crankshaft anyhow. For this, I just hope the block is good. So when I get the motor to the machine shop, I'll get it taken apart and hopefully the block is still good, which I'm assuming it will be. But again, we have to get into it and see what's going on. All right, that's all we got for this one. Hope you guys learned something. We've got a lot of work to do with this thing, but I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it. Also maybe have a cool deal coming up here pretty soon for some goodies for this thing, so I'll keep you guys updated with this. Frankie with the emotions, it's awesome. Thanks for watching. Again, please don't forget to subscribe, comment, share with anyone that likes 7.3s. This is some pretty cool stuff we're doing here. So this build's only gonna get better. Stay tuned. Until next time, I'm Brandon, that's Frankie, this is the 7.3 Garage.